Oh, Candy. Oh my goodness. I just watched this movie. It has Heath freaking Ledger in it. He's a poet and he's in love with this painter. And her name is Candy. Well, her name is Candace, but he calls her Candy. And it's one of those films that are, like, you can tell they had an idea and they did what they needed to do to execute this and bring it to life by using whatever resources that they had. But that doesn't even matter. Like, the budget, I feel like it doesn't reflect in the quality. I mean, it does. It looks like an indie film. But I think that's what I like about it. I like that it feels like it has a pulse. I love films that feel like their own entity and have their own heartbeat, their own personality. And that's what this makes me feel. It's a 3-act screenplay. It starts in heaven, and then it goes to earth, and then the third one is hell. It's a love story. And it follows this love story through all 3 of these realms. And we get to see how the relationship changes. And I think what I love about Heath Ledger is that when he's on screen, it doesn't feel like he's acting. It doesn't feel like acting. And sometimes I prefer for the acting to feel like a performance. But with Heath Ledger, his performance is so well that I'm okay if it wasn't acting. And I think that that's what his films do for me. They bleed. Oh my goodness, they bleed into reality. And it's not just art anymore. At that point, I feel like I'm getting glimpses of reality in his performances. And it's just so worth the watch, because those glimpses are so impactful that it makes you want more. It makes you want to see more of him. And I think it's why his performances have always been so impactful to me. And every time I see him on screen, at first with this particular film, Candy, I was like, ooh, Heath Ledger. And then I felt some resistance. Not resistance, but more of just caution. Like a warning almost. So you know that I felt intuitively that my spirit is just like, hey girl, prepare yourself, because it's a dark story. But I feel like it was one of the best movies I ever seen in my life. Ever. I fell in love with it from the moment it came on. And I just fell more and more and more and more in love as the story evolved. And even though it got darker and it got deeper, it didn't lose any of its vitality or vibrance. I feel like I was stimulated evenly throughout. Like the stimulation wasn't just in one part, or it wasn't just one element of the film or of the story. It was the whole entire thing. It heightened all of my senses and then gave them stimulation. You know, just in the way that I needed. And I appreciate that. I love that he was a poet, but the story was poetic. I loved the narration. I loved his voice. It felt raw. And just real. And the poetry didn't feel cheesy. It didn't feel like he was narrating. It didn't feel like narration. And sometimes movies about drugs and this idea of a junkie and addiction, and like sometimes those movies can get tired, because I just think it's just stressed a lot in the industry because it's used a lot. So I think just over time, it starts to feel already done. But with this one, it was different. It was more, I feel like, of a love story than it was about the drugs, even though the drugs were definitely visible and a heavy component to the overall just story in general. It still was more of an addiction to each other. That they were addicted to each other just as much as they were addicted to the drugs. And when they weren't, like, high, then they weren't high. It was really low in terms of how they saw each other, how they saw themselves. And I like that it didn't really glorify the drugs or the drug use. It didn't romanticize it in the way that I find a lot of films do, and just the industry does in general. It tries to make it look cool with the cinematography, and, you know, it really tries to depict the high and give you all these cool colors and these awesome frames and these shots. And for me, it didn't glorify the drugs, but it helped me understand how romanticized they were in the mind of our characters, which is different because you can still see the reality outside of the addiction and the love and how drawn they were to each other. And I love when actors have, like, true chemistry, and you can tell, like, when they're being intimate, it doesn't feel forced, it doesn't feel awkward, it just feels like how it should, you know. it actually feels like they feel something. And I think I just enjoy movies that can give me an accurate feeling of romance. Because I feel like romance is essential. I think romance is important for survival. As human beings, I think we need romance in the way that we need sunlight and water and air to breathe. Okay, that's it.